I am so excited. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay.
You sound like I remember you. Yeah,
And everybody that sees me from high school or my adolescence period is like, you look the
you
same.
do. You do. I mean, you're like an older version of yourself, but like
I
it's
know.
all there.
Thank you. Thank you. You look great too. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I know a lot of people like, they tell me, "Oh my god, I'm so nervous." And I'm like, "It's literally just a conversation."
Okay.
I ask you the questions, but you already know what I'm asking, so it's okay.
Right. So we're good. I put the world behind me because I love it.
Because you've been all around the world.
I have, and we're gonna talk about it. Oh my god, I'm so
I
excited.
can't wait. There's so much to talk about, so.
I know, right?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Change for the Better: The Power of Arts in Education, episode 49.
Change for the better, and the music made me stronger. Now I'm changed for the better. You were there for me. Community, oh, I've changed.
Oh, it's so exciting. I can't believe I'm like almost at episode 50. It's like I've done this is like my 49th one. I can't even believe it. It's crazy to me.
I can't believe it either.
I'm so happy that you're here too, like that you're doing this in this
I'm
season.
really excited.
Today,
Mhm.
we are looking back to the spring of 1999, right before the change of the millennium. At this time, it was our first production of The Wiz, which, if you aren't familiar with it, is like this really magical production that requires number one, a diverse casting pool and a great deal of funk and soul. It really is magical. And at the time, it was my first time directing this piece, and I was like kind of nervous about it. Since then, I've done it twice more, including this past year. We just did our third version of The Wiz because the show is that good and it's that fun and inspiring. Then it was my fourth musical with Thespians. I was still, kind of young then. And I knew that I had to produce something like really beautifully representative of the community that I was working within. So it was audition week. And amongst all of the students trying out, we had a pretty big casting pool at the time.
So cool.
Um, in walks this fresh faced, beaming young woman with these giant eyes and this beaming smile and a personal energy that just lit up the room. And I hadn't seen her before in Thespians. She was a newcomer. And I remember my excitement as I watched her do her audition. So she delivered lines with this innocence and purity, this sense of wonder. And it made my heart melt when her bright smile just like turned upside down and she played sad. And she was Dorothy. That was it. She was Dorothy. I didn't have to think twice. I remember her being an absolute joy to work with, even though she was really green, having really never done theater before, much less musical theater. But she was really eager to learn, and she was a quick study at that. Sadly, it was our only show together because she graduated that same year. But I have always held a special place in my heart for my first Dorothy. And in many ways, we learned that show together. I should have guessed that her quick study abilities would take her quite far. And literally, it's taken her quite far. After a year of community college, she joined the United States Air Force, where she learned to be an air traffic controller. She served on active duty for about 8 years, 3 of which were served in Japan. And then she took her skills to the private sector, working at JFK Airport in the tower. Like, she took a temporary detour to attend NYU College of Dentistry. Like I said, like really super smarts. She was president of her class, and she became a dental hygienist for 2 years before the skies called her back to air traffic control. Right now, she's working at Tweed New Haven Airport in Connecticut, keeping our skies nice and safe. And I wanted to make mention of one more thing before I move this forward. I should mention that she is first cousins with my episode 43 guest, Esky Nance Doucette. And when Esky and I were talking during that interview, Esky mentioned her first cousin, who I remembered very fondly. So, without any further ado, I want to ask you your first question. It's a meatball, it's super easy, which
Okay.
is, what is your name, the year that you graduated, and just tell me a little bit more about what you're doing right now.
Okay. My name is Hadiyah Buchanan. I graduated in 1999, and I am an air traffic controller at Tweed New Haven in New Haven, Connecticut.
So talk a little bit, I mean, because you joined the Air Force. Like, talk a little bit about that decision from community college. Like, where were you at the time?
So honestly, I want to go back to 1999 first because meeting you really changed my life. I was always like a thespian at heart,
Mhm.
and it was my first production I ever my only production that I officially ever tried out for. I know because after I did it, I was like, I want to go to SUNY Purchase. My mother was like, "You just started acting yesterday, so you're gonna go to like a regular school, a real school, because in outside of the thespian world and acting and performing arts,
Mm.
people really don't look at it as like that's a real, occupation."
Right.
And I was kind of like down, so I said, "I'm gonna do a year of community college." I was actually in New York. I graduated from Spring Valley High School, and then I went down to back to where my mom was at because I moved away my junior year. That's why I was never part of the studio.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
I was a sophomore. I was the president in my class in 10th grade.
Right.
I moved away my junior year, and then I came back my senior year, and I tried. Yes, so yes, that was my experience in high school. But meeting you and doing the audition first was like I feel like there was like 250 students. That's the number that I'm remembering, but
It wasn't quite that much. It wasn't that many.
I know. I'm like, what was it? But it was a lot of students, and we had to do singing, dancing, and like performing. And to get the role was like life changing for me because I was like, I knew I should be an actress, right? So it was just really amazing to do that. And then I graduated. I went to community college, and I was like, I really don't want to do this. Like my heart is in like, acting. So I was like, what can I do to make a lot of money and not go to school? My mother's her first cousin was in the Air Force.
Mhm.
We call him Uncle Gary because he's my mom's cousin, but he's, so much older than us. So he's in the Air Force, and I called him and I said, I just saw a commercial on TV and it said aim high. I said, I'm thinking about it. He's like, oh my goodness, I'm so excited for you. Like, let me know what you need. Let me know. I'll get you tours, whatever you need. So I signed up and I took the ASVAB and I said, what job can I do that I don't necessarily have to go back to college for?
Mm.
But still make a lot of money. And air traffic, I tested very well
Mhm.
for the ASVAB, and air traffic was the top of the list. Little did I know, air traffic was an
Well,
experience.
so it's the experience. I mean, it is just stress like 24/7 when you're there.
Yes, yes,
And
it
it's
is.
interesting because, and maybe this will kind of come out as we talk about, looking back, but when you're handed like the lead role, having never done it before, all of a sudden, boom, that's high stress. Like that is the beginning of just jump into the deep end.
Right. Exactly. So, and it really like it, but it felt so comfortable and really just I felt really good when I did it when I was up there. Like I felt like my actual life melted away, and I was Dorothy.
Mhm.
So it was really comfortable for me to be in that role.
When it's that far away from, your lived experience, I remember the feelings. And I
Hmm.
remember like, even throughout the rehearsal process, just like watching you do your thing and you sort of assimilated into, the character seamlessly, where we're just drawn in to watching you deliver lines and telling the story and the relationship with the three other leads, and I was like, oh, this is just delicious and fun.
I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Our cast was it was a perfect ensemble of, characters and castmates. So it was really beautiful. Like I still remember like Stavros and Graham, like, and we really complemented one another and fed off of each other. And I think it was most of our first productions as leads, I think.
Mhm.
Even Deirdre.
That's
It
and
was
that's
like,
the way it goes, like, with thespians, because oftentimes with adolescents, they might have an inclination, they might have talent that, hasn't really been brought to the forefront, but
mhm,
because they're so, like, in their own way half the time, it takes, like, a shove or a yank, to get them to just get up there and just do it.
right.
And when it does happen, you're like, "Oh my god, where did you come from?" It's high school theater. Like, that's what happens.
I know it was awesome.
So after your tour, your 8-year tour
Mhm.
with the Air Force, then you came into the like, how did you get the job at JFK?
So I started at a company called Adicel, which was the training company that designs the simulators to teach air traffic control.
Mm,
So I designed the training simulations for JFK, Newark, and LaGuardia.
wow.
And I went up and I became a field representative for the company Adicel, and I taught air traffic because I did that as well. Because I worked with Adicel in the Air Force
Okay.
because they were the training company for the Air Force as well as the civilian sector. They make these huge TVs and they simulate the actual airport that you're at. And there was like 16 TVs that surround you, and you are in the center, and you're controlling traffic, but it's a computer simulation. So that's how
Mhm.
we control traffic to learn how to do it.
Any major crashes in the simulator?
Sometimes, sometimes. So that's how I got into it because I was in the Air Force and I was living in Japan, and I got in touch with the company because I was running the simulation in Japan, and they were like, "We really, we want to keep in touch because if you're going to get out, in a year, we really want you to come in." So I came in, and then when I first went into the Air Force and I took air traffic as my job, I said I want to go back to JFK and work there. Like so, coming full circle, I went back first as the field representative for Adicel
Mhm.
to train air traffic. And then I did that for about a year and a half. I went in like 2009 and I went into the FA, Federal Aviation Administration, in 2011.
Mhm.
I had to go to school in Oklahoma because you have to learn through their system now, even though I was a certified controller in the Air Force, and we get our certification through the FAA. You still have to go through the certification process when you come in under their umbrella. So I did that, and then yeah, that's how I got started. So I was the field rep for Adicel, and I did that for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and then I was like, I'm just gonna apply because at first I didn't know if I wanted to really go back to air traffic because, like you said, it's so stressful, and I was having a good time as a field rep, because it's fun. You kind of stay away from the strap. You're just teaching it. So
Right. But you're not immersed in the middle of it. How long is a shift usually?
8 hours.
Oh,
8
okay. So 8 hours of like, oh,
So, so where I am now, it's like 4 hours of like, like it's not always just air traffic. There was a building that collapsed in my airspace in downtown, and I had the emergency services call and say, "Hey, there's a helicopter flying around us right now, and you need to get him out of here now." And I was like, "Yes, sir." So because I had no idea until he called. So then it's an emergency, so I had to like clear the path so
well,
they could do their job and save people. Because 8 people got injured. I don't think there was any fatalities, but
right. And this was in New Haven or somewhere?
in New Haven. I have some stories about even since I've been here. Air Force, and then coming back to the civilian side, and
A lot of like hurry up and wait and then jump, which is kind of like theater too.
it is. And ironically, dentistry is everybody's like, how did you make that transition?
Yes, yes.
Like what made you change course like that, right?
Yeah. So what was it?
So I was training for my certification, and I actually went from JFK to Morristown, MMU, Morristown in New Jersey.
Jersey. Mhm.
It's a municipal airport in New Jersey.
Mhm.
And I was training, and I went to the dentist for a regular cleaning. And I walked in, and they're like, "Dee, you're here! Oh my goodness, how are you? You look fabulous!" And I walked in like a celebrity. Like I felt like I was like, I want to walk into work like this every day. And we're joking. I'm like, "Are you guys hiring?" And they're like, Let's back up for a second. So I was going through some trials at work. There was some discrimination, and there was just some things that I was going through. So it really made for even more stressful environment, right?
Mhm.
So, and then just going into that environment and just feeling like I was so loved by the community I was in. I was like, "Are you guys hiring?" And then the office manager came up to me after my appointment, and she's like, "I can't really see you as an assistant, but I can definitely see you as a hygienist." And I'm like, "Really?" I never even would have thought about it. Like I was just joking. And she said, I really could. Long story short, I finished my
So
job and I resigned from the FA for a little while. And I was like, well, actually, while I was going through the process, because I ended up filing a EEO complaint.
mhm.
And so while I was going through the process, I started taking classes. I said, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to transition. And as you know, Eski's my first cousin, and she was just burning up the trail in nursing. So I was like, this is kind of, and she has always been a huge inspiration to me because she's a year younger than me.
Right.
But she has just accomplished so much. And like she said, she was always an amazing student. I
Sure.
was like an amazing student, but I was also like the social butterfly.
Mhm.
I was just so I was good at both, and she is too. But she was like academically like, so that's how I ended up in dentistry.
But then air traffic called you back.
Then air traffic called me back right before the pandemic, as it would have it. So it's been a journey. It's been interesting.
So you got through the first question. Good job.
Whew,
See?
sweaty.
Super easy, super easy. Okay. So now we're going to start looking back at
Okay.
young Hadiyah. So using your adult brain, describe your adolescent self.
I was and still am super, super sensitive.
Mm,
I'm an empath. I
mm,
really feel deeply for those around me. And it really was my gift. I don't know if you know this, but my name means guide to righteousness, Hadiyah. Hadi, Hadi, means the gift or the guide, depending on what translation you look up. But the guide to righteousness is the one that I identify with. I really felt like throughout in my whole life, I was always looked to like for just a sounding board, a confidant, a listening ear, a shoulder, look to for guidance, same age, older, younger. And I feel like that was really like where I felt the most fulfilled.
Mm.
Yeah, just being that helper. I was voted in my class in 10th grade. They sent out a survey like, who do you trust if you're in a crisis? Who do you talk to if you're going through something? And I think 13 students, I had the highest number of students tell right on my name on one of their questions. Like I would tell Hadiyah, I would go to Hadiyah. And so we went to the retreat. At the time we were doing natural helpers and peer mediators. We did the retreat, and yeah, I felt like that was my calling. It still is, you know.
This is a really sketchy memory, but I don't think I'm making it up. I remember I think it was, like, closer to towards the end of the production run, and the sensitivity that you were speaking of, and I think you were having, like, a really hard time at one point. Maybe it was just the stress, or
Mhm.
maybe something was happening. I'm not sure what it was, but I just remember, like, that difference between, like, that bright and, emanating sort of glee and happiness and joy, and
Mhm.
how crushing it was to see you upset, because you were upset about something, whatever it was, and I was like, "Oh my god, no, 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 you need to be okay, Adia, what is happening here?" It was like the weight of the world was on your shoulders in that moment, and I wish I remember what it was.
So I remember actually during we were actually doing the show. I want to say it was the second night, and my voice was going. It was like I was really like having a hard time. We opened up, it was phenomenal. The second night, and I forgot my silver shoes somewhere. And they were asking me, where are your sneakers? So I ran off the stage, like from behind the stage, and I ran. I remember being like out of breath. My voice is going. I was sipping tea, like tea with lemon all day, and I couldn't believe how you can transit. But it really translated in my life too. Even now in air traffic, how you have to like you flip a switch, like even as a mom, or you just go into this alternate space and you adapt, so I remember feeling like not great, on the inside, but I was like, I have to do this. Like this was so important to me. That's what I remember the most. And I think we even filmed that night, because I think we didn't film on the first night and we didn't film on the last night. I want to say it was the second night of production. And I remember feeling like so stressed out about that moment, because somebody was like, where are your shoes? And I ran, they were in the band room somewhere somehow, and I got them and I brought them back, and then I'm like, and then I said my first line with like ease. Like I don't know how
Right.
so
You just
I do
yeah,
that with everything. Like,
you flip the switch.
I did. I
You
did. I flipped
you
the switch.
do what you need to do. Talking about that moment, or sort of connecting to that moment, what were things, or something that happened in that theater environment, and it could have been at any point in
Hmm.
the process, that helped you to manage or to regulate your adolescent self?
When you're a thespian, you have the opportunity to be someone else.
Mm,
In that moment that you are performing, your who you are melts away and you become whoever you're portraying, right? So I think for me, my life was different in a lot of ways, and I felt like the ability to become someone else was a good feeling for me, maybe an escape, maybe a comfort for me. And I do it, I did it with ease. I did it even before I auditioned. I would act out scenes for my mom and my family, like at family functions. So it was like always innate in me to like just make people laugh and bring joy to the room. So I think that's the biggest thing that I took away from it. And that's why I wanted to continue, So,
you never know. There's always community theaters out there.
you know what? I went to a play this year, January 2023.
Mhm,
I went to go see Take Me Out with Williams.
mhm,
It was a baseball play, and I sat next to this beautiful couple, Virginia and her husband, and she was a drama teacher, and she's like, "Do you act?" And I was like, "No, I did one performance." And she's like, "You need to go to your community theater tomorrow." She's like, "I can see you on stage right now." And we just had a lovely, lovely time. We exchanged information, and they were from Boston. They had come down for the week to like do shows because that was her, love. And I was like, I should really do it. And I really do think I want to do it. I
I
just
think
have
you
to.
should.
I should.
You should.
I wouldn't look into it.
You do it when you want to, when you have when you have the time, you make the commitment.
Right.
Hopefully it's, a show that you connect with. And it's funny because I've wanted to get back, into performing because I did it, before my Spring Valley days. And I was fine leaving it because, this was a whole lot better than like for me than the professional theater route. It was like, wait, I have to like go places. I don't want to go anywhere, But I've always been like, it would be really cool to kind of get back on the stage and just kind of exercise that part of my brain and that part of my expertise. And, doing 2 shows a year and a dance concert, I'm like, okay, not right now. It's not that time. But I keep thinking like, oh, maybe in retirement. Never know. I never know. But they're there for you
Right.
to get involved with.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
what are some of the lessons that you learned from that experience that you have taken with you that you use today?
I think the biggest lesson for me is to be present. I was and sometimes still tend to be the planner, right? Like I'm planning for tomorrow. I'm looking for tomorrow, What am I going to do? What am I going and sometimes when you're so hyper focused on tomorrow, you're missing what's going on today. So I think that's what I took from that experience because I was like, I want to be, and then I went on to do something completely different, Air Force and aviation, air traffic controller. It was like such a difficult road that I took, but it was so hyper focused on what I can do in the future to make money. Like what can I take from right now? And I was always projecting forward. And not that it's a bad thing to be prepared, but it's sometimes you miss out on the little things. I may not have auditioned or something like that. So I just try to be present more and more.
I have this conversation or this theme that kind of on a loop. Whenever you're trying to do something that
Mhm.
is sort of like sequential in nature, like you have to plan things out and all that. But if you have to start here and go to here and go to here and go to here, but you're trying to jump from here to there, like you're missing all of those steps that will do a better job of getting you to that end goal.
Right.
And I say that to students all the time. I say that to myself. I'm like, you have to be right here in the moment,
Mhm.
uh, because you're going to miss something, and you're either going to get hurt, or you're going to forget something, or like you're going to skip over a step that you really need to do right here and now.
Yep.
And I think that's a good lesson. So we talked about one of the big lessons that you learned, which was being mindful and present.
Hmm.
Anything else that you can remember that you can sort of extract?
I think also what I learned, because as I stated earlier, I moved away my junior year,
Mhm.
and I really was like not happy in Georgia, and my mom is still there to go after what you want.
Mhm.
I begged and pleaded. My mom finally let me come back. I lived with my great aunt for a little while, then I lived with my godparents, and it was really one of the best decisions that I think I could have done for myself. Even though I was young, I knew that that environment there was just not where I wanted to be or where I should be. And then I came back and did one of the greatest things in my life, which would be in the Wiz. For me, that was really a huge because it showed me that you can do anything if you put your mind to it. Because it was my first audition. I was super nervous. I said, I'm just going to try out. Maybe I'll get this or maybe I'll get something. And to get the lead was like, I was born for this.
My calling.
And it just was such an amazing experience. And I thank God that I was just like, Mom, please, let me go graduate with my friends. I was with them my whole life. Like, let me go back. And then Mr. Pollard and you, and there was just so many key people in my life at that time that really pushed me to be the best, 17-year-old self, my 17-year-old self. So I really do feel like if you want it, you can achieve it. Go for it. Don't put yourself in a box. Don't put yourself in the corner. So that's what I take from that.
Indeed.
Indeed.
So, how do you think that you have changed since you graduated from high school?
Hmm. I think that again, I go back to the planning because I'm pretty type A, and I'm pretty hard on myself. And I try now to give myself grace. I have a very good group of friends, but one in particular, Dana. We sit down every year since 2020. We sit down every year and write down a master plan for the year. And it has been very thoughtful and planned out, but also we're accountability partners. So with that plan, I tend to be like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. But she's there to balance me out, and vice versa, to say, even though you planned it and you may have missed the mark for this one thing, it's okay because I can be, so, like I said, tunnel vision. So it helps me to again be present. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is because I'm constantly trying to be better, but you also have to enjoy life. So take a moment, give yourself grace. It's going to be okay because it will be there tomorrow.
I feel like you might have just answered my next question,
Okay.
but I'm going to give you a chance to find something else as well.
Okay.
What would your adult Hadiyah self tell your high school Hadiyah self now to help ease the way?
My favorite quote, I think, is yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. And it just rings true to everything that I live for. You can't do anything about yesterday. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. All we can do is focus on today. And I really try to live by that. I try to make each day the best day for myself and the people around me. Whether, it's work, at the grocery store, I treat people with love and respect wherever I go because I want it to come back to me. And that's how I want to be treated. I feel like live each day to the fullest and be present. So that's my motto.
You're a woman after my own heart.
Hey, right? Ooh.
Because that's exactly how I feel. I feel like there's so many people out there and they're hung up in their stuff and
Mhm.
they don't know how to separate like their stuff from how they treat other people. It all sort of conflates together.
Mhm.
And to me, I'm like, if I'm, mean to somebody, it's gonna come back at me at some
Right.
point, and I don't want any of that. I wanna, like, look at somebody and make him smile, and I wanna offer him a hug, and
Me too.
it's such a nicer way to be.
It feels good. To walk around and just being angry, and that's not a nice feeling. When you're walking around smiling and making people laugh and we're just having a good time, it's like this is what life is to me, what it's about.
It's a cycle. It does. It just keeps coming back, in spades,
Right.
and then people, like, remember you for that, and so that when they think of you, that's what they think of.
Absolutely.
When I think of you, I think that's the Hadiyah magic, you know? You
I'm
had that,
gonna coin that, the Hadiyah magic.
the Hadiyah magic. TM right here. I'm gonna put that on a hat.
Right? Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
The Hadiyah magic. I always like this question. I like this question.
All right.
What is something that you're grappling with now?
I have always wanted to be a mom,
Mm.
and I'm older in life, and it's still one of my biggest desires. So that's where I am.
That's a mountain right there.
That is a mountain.
As I was prepping, for this, and I noticed that, when you sent me some pictures and all that stuff, and in the preparatory responses, there was like no mention of, family or kids, and I went, oh, okay, so we'll steer clear of that, because there are reasons. And I kept thinking that you've been such a high achiever between being in the Air Force and air traffic control. And that I feel like that, way of life, that very intense way of life, I would imagine, and I don't know that this is the reason, but would not necessarily lend itself to fostering those kind of relationships and settling down and having a family life. I know that you've kind of been all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My life has been a journey, like most, right? Like everyone else. And from my childhood, I didn't want to do certain things in a certain way.
Mhm.
There were a lot of factors that held me back from being a young mother, like, a lot of my friends and family. Not to say that because they are all wonderful mothers. And I look at all of my friends and family that have had children that are wonderful and amazing women and mothers. And I said, I wanted a family. I come from a single parent household, and I didn't want that for myself. But as you get older and biologically and all those other things, you have to make choices. So we'll see. Jury's still, it's not over,
Yeah.
jury's still out. I'm definitely on that path to become a mother, and I believe that God will bless me with children and a husband. Don't forget that.
If it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Absolutely.
Will be put out in front of you, and you'll be like, okay, time to go.
Absolutely. I
Mm,
agree.
that's a tough one. That's a
Yeah,
tough.
that was a tough one. I got a little, because I
Yeah.
get a little misty. I got,
Yeah.
but my journey is still beautiful. It's just we're not there yet. We're not at that part of the story yet.
That's the real stuff. A lot of people grapple with all sorts of things. And not to say that the other stuff isn't real, but like that's the real, like, down to your soul kind of stuff. Because
Yes.
that also has to do with, identity,
Hmm.
how you see yourself or how you want to see yourself. So
Absolutely.
I get that. I do. Tell me one thing that you miss about your high school self, and then tell me something that has gotten better since you graduated.
What do I miss about my high school self? I think that in high school, my my bounce back from hurt and disappointment was was pretty good. As I got older, it got worse for a little bit there. I went through some pretty huge disappointments, and I can say now that looking back, I'm not as naive as I once was, but my bounce back has gotten better because you cannot hold on to things. Stress will kill you. My job is stressful enough. I can't allow your insecurities or your disappointments to affect me to where it's crippling. My
Yeah.
bounce back was amazing back then. I was able to kind of look past whatever, but I was also naive in the choices. I mean, as most adolescents are, right?
Sure.
So I think that just growing and really the ability to move forward after you've been disappointed or hurt or let down by whomever, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that's, I think, what's gotten better as an adult.
The ability to come back, the ability to move forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause, teenagers do tend to get sort of saddled with their.
So it was good. And then I went through like from late teens to my, late 20s, I would say there was some pretty devastating, or early 30s even. There was some pretty devastating things that happened to me that really knocked me off.
Mm.
My foundation was rocked. I was rocked to my core by some close people in my life, and that I really trusted. But I came back better than ever. You know,
Because we learn.
we learned.
Teenagers, they learn eventually,
Right.
but they don't know what they don't know. They don't
Hmm.
they need to pay attention to and really retain.
Right.
They're just figuring that out. We've been through some more stuff and we're like, "Oh, I need to be listening to the universe on this one.
Right. 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 Right.
Let me store that in an accessible place."
Absolutely.
Oh, that doesn't happen again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you could give a piece of sage advice to high school students now, what would that be?
Give yourself grace.
Mm,
We are all learning every single day. The people that you look up to and you admire were all where you are. We were all in high school. We were all deciding what we're going to do next. We were all deciding how to move forward with our lives, because that's the one thing I think, especially in America, it's like you graduate from high school and it's like, well, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I just feel like give yourself some grace. You're going to stumble, you're going to fall. Get back up and try again.
mhm.
The only way you fail is if you don't try. So that's my,
And they have time.
and they have time.
That at that point in their lives, we have time too.
Right.
Technically, we're alive, we have time,
We have time.
but they really have time.
Give yourself that grace. You know,
Yeah, that's
you
good.
can make a lot of choices and changes and you'll still be okay because you have a lot more time. So, yes.
True. We are rounding out the end of our questions. See? Easy,
I
easy.
know. And it went by fast. I was like, I'm sweating. I was getting ready and I'm like, where am I going to sit?
This question brings us back to the now.
Okay.
So tell me 3 or so self-care practices that you do now to help you to center or to regulate yourself.
So I'm going to start with hair and beauty. I get my hair, nails, pedicure on a very consistent basis. I got my hair done for this. No. So I think that self care is the best care, because if you can't love on yourself, then you can't love on others. So I think that self care is very, very important. Another thing that I do is travel. I just
Mm.
got from Cabo, and let me tell you something. My life is so dope because I travel and see the world. I think there's so much outside of Spring Valley, New York, and Shelton, Connecticut, where there is just so much life out there, that and so much culture and so much beauty and so much love, that I think travel is like the ultimate gift to yourself. Get out there. And let me see what else I do. I think fellowship with my friends and family. I think Friday night was so beautiful. Eski coordinated this beautiful outing amongst women of color professional, and it was just phenomenal. It was like the best thing ever. You know, just be in your tribe and loving life and enjoying every day. So I think that travel is probably my top. Definitely taking care of myself and working out here and there, but really just
That
enjoy
goes
life.
onto the working out kind of goes onto that like sort of self body care,
Right, right. I
Yes.
love it.
It does. It does. It's funny. So I've been doing this Spring Valley gig for a really long time now.
Quite some time.
I got some time I've been spending there. I want to say, is it like 27? No, 20, 26, 27, something like that.
Right.
And we have like, kind of a small group of friends, my husband and I, and they're kind of scattered all over the place. But the people who I have developed friendships with, to be
Mhm.
perfectly honest, are the people who I've kind of plucked throughout my years of this job. Because when I started, I was like in my mid-20s, so I was not much older
Right.
than the people who I was teaching. I mean, it was
Mhm.
6 years, 7 years. So I was really young myself, especially, when we met. And so as I was growing up into my adulthood, these people were kind of just behind me. And I've
Right.
always been fascinated, and maybe this is in part another reason why I'm doing this podcast thing, is because I'm fascinated by where people go from the time they're in high school, how their life kind of morphs into their adult selves, and what piece of what they experienced in high school stuck with them.
Mhm.
I have like really dear friends who I love spending time with who were thespians.
It's amazing. Even when we see each other, there are just we it's like we almost go right back to the moment when we were performing together, and it's beautiful. Like when I, bump into anybody, especially from that production, because it was my only one. It's like we're like I'm Dorothy and it's, the Tin Man and it's, it's just it's amazing. It's amazing. So I agree. It's something so beautiful in those wonderful memories that we have. You know? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we have come to the end
Oh no.
of our interview together. Hadiyah Buchanan, thank you for joining me with your beautiful self.
It was my absolute pleasure.
This was amazing, and I was so excited to see you because we've like seen each other once in a while throughout the course of
We
time.
we have connected, but this is in such a different way because I don't have a large social media presence. I'm just not. That's not my thing. So, but I support. Like when I saw SK, I'm like, send it to me so I can post it. And then that's how I ended up because I didn't even know that you did this. So for me, it was like I couldn't believe that you had. I think we even follow each other on like LinkedIn and stuff, but I always saw it, but I was like, hmm. I saw you talking about the Wiz again, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta get in touch with her because I want to see. Remember, so this was amazing. This was amazing to see my beautiful cousin, and now to be on myself, and it was an honor and a privilege, really, to have
And
this
full
conversation.
disclosure, like you were kind of on my list, like my short list. And when Eski and I were talking and she mentioned your name, I was like, that's it. I gotta call her.
Right.
It just happened.
I know. So it all worked out. It's all in God's plan. And that's what I am really striving to really live by. It's not my plan. I can plan all day long, but what God has for me is for me. And this is right where I'm supposed to be on episode 49 with you.
Well,
Rounding up to your 50th. So I'm excited.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
everybody else, tune in next week for episode 50. We've got good stuff in store. And once again, Hadiyah, thank
Thank you.
you. Want to hear a little more? Here we go. Boom. So this is where I ran into the problem with Escape because we did this like get off, get back on. And usually when I get on, I just turn the recording off because sometimes there's a little bit of a lag. And then when they come back on, I turn it back on. And yeah, I don't think I turned it back on. So 3 months later, when I'm like ready to edit her episode and the second half of it wasn't there, I was like, Escape. So we had to redo the second half.
That's so funny. And she kept it a secret. It was so funny because when it dropped, it was like, what you even like She's like, girl. She's like, I mentioned you, so get ready. And I'm like, oh my goodness. She's so amazing though. She's my day one. Like we are a year apart. She's born in August, I'm in July, and she just always been like such an inspiration with her journey is just so beautiful. And I tell her all the time, you are so phenomenal, you
I got
know?
such great feedback from, once when the episode dropped, such great feedback from her story. And
Yeah.
she needs to take it on the road. I feel like I want to reach out to her, be like, hey, let's write a book, like,
I know, seriously. She does. She really does. I mean, but she does so much. She's the PTA president. She's everywhere. We just went out. Not to get sidetracked, but we just went out on Friday night, and she had 10. No, there was like 12 of us total from all different walks, all different parts of her life, family, friends, nurses, and it was such an amazing night. I'm like, listen, we need to do this once a month. We can rotate houses because we went to a restaurant and it was a little bit louder. We went to Sangria's, but I was like, you are so inspiring. And it comes to her with such ease. I mean, we're very similar, in a lot of ways, but I just look at her in awe. Like I really do. Like I just love her and I think she is the best.
Oh, blood,
Yeah.
blood,
Yeah.
you got the
So
same blood coursing through your veins in there.
our mothers are sisters, so we
Mm,
get it from our mamas, I guess.
that's right.
And we grew up like sisters. So as you
And
can see, I'm cheesing because I was like happy that thing was over because I for a minute like it was so stressful and I'm so sensitive, like I said. And one day a professor, this is the last thing, and then one day one of my professors pulled me to the side and said, "You will never do this job. You are too timid. You are this. You are that." And I cried, and I'm walking down the hallway, and then this civilian instructor, he was military, the first one, and then the civilian instructor pulled me into a room, and he said, "Get in here." And I was like, it was an older black gentleman, and I'll never forget it. He said, "You sit here and you cry." He called in another military member, also an older black gentleman, and he said, "Don't let anybody tell you you can't do this. You are going to do it, and you are going to be great." And it helped me get through because it was like the last like week. I'm like, I'm gonna fail. And he really just he pushed me over that last because it was difficult for me. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like this is a serious job that unless you are in it, you really don't have any idea what we actually do. So many people say, you're doing this, and I'm like,
so
no.
you're trying to like prevent people from dying
Yes.
and
So
dropping from the skies.
And like last year, I had an aircraft come in. He was on a very short approach. He was having engine failure and he ended up landing in the Quinnipiac River. I got put in for the air traffic controller of the year for Midwest. And it was intense. And within seconds, he was on my frequency. And then the next second, he was in the river. It was him, his wife, and his dog in a little aircraft. And they all survived, thank God. But in those moments when I have to react and respond and control the situation as best to my abilities, because I'm not in the aircraft, right? So, but you just, like I said, that switch flips on and it's like a superpower, you know?
I
So
mean,
it's
you
incredible.
gotta have some guts, some like real inner strength to pull up from.
It's intense,
Yeah.
but it's also a blessing. It really brings in things into focus for you. It brings it all into focus, like, because in seconds, circumstances, lives change. Seconds.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.